threats. They couldn't be personalized in Stalin or Khrushchev or Hitler or the Emperor Hirohito or somewhere. It was more amorphous. It was Al-Qaeda, which was sort of many-headed, or some group like that. And he said, then Americans began to revert to type. And as an historian of American political history, he examines the language that was used with respect to Lincoln, or Andrew Jackson, or Thomas Jefferson, or someone like that. And he says, American political history is filled with invective. And he said, what we're doing now is simply reverting to type. And of course, that made me very sad to hear that, because I'm not an expert on American history or American political history by any means, but that's a really long period to have that kind of polemics going back and forth. And so I'm thinking, well, my God, if we're at the beginning of this, I'll never see the end of it. I never will. And you might not also. I will tell you frankly, I don't think invective is morally right. I don't think it is appropriate to respond that way to someone with whom one has differences, and yet Paul did it. Okay? I think a similar question, is the assertion of superiority an appropriate response? And we've been laughing about trash talking, but let's face it, it's pretty adolescent behavior, isn't it? And sometimes, I think adults who perdure in adolescent behavior, we call them immature, okay, don't we? Now, sometimes, if everybody understands that expressions of superiority are meant in a self-mocking fashion, then there's a different kind of language register at work there, right? When I've watched, my friends play basketball every now and again, or a golf game or something like that, and they're like, watch me make this. Hold my beer, that kind of thing. And then you know that it's self-mocking. But when someone truly, is sort of asserting his or her superiority, you sort of think, maybe it's time to grow up here, And then thirdly, mockery. Now, of course, I'm Irish Catholic. Mockery is the language register in which my people typically speak because, and this is what's really interesting, mockery is typically the language, or the language register, that the oppressed use against the powerful, okay? Because mockery tends to deflate those who are more powerful than they are. Now, I wonder if that's the case here in the Pauline literature. Was Paul mocking these opponents of his by calling them hyper-apostles or superlative apostles because they were more powerful than he? It's possible, okay? But I think we probably have to recognize that mockery is typically the response of the oppressed against the more powerful. Yeah?
These are all hallmarks of Middle Eastern culture. I mean, rhetoric and invective, it's what they do, and since it's a very honor and shame-oriented society, yes, right, you have to shame another person to elevate your own dignity.
Right.
And so I think what Paul's doing is he's just doing the cultural norm.
Right. There are a number of really important scholars these days who use the kind of lens of honor-shame as a way of coming to terms with either Paul of Tarsus or, much more commonly, Jesus of Nazareth. Okay? I think your point is well taken. We don't live in an honor-shame culture, though, do we? Okay? So I think one of the questions is even admitting, and I think that it's probably a valid point, admitting that Paul is motivated by honor-shame kinds of considerations, which means if I'm going to do a sidebar here. Honor is your positive public profile. And in an honor-shame culture, you seek to accrue honor. And it's a zero-sum game, so you accrue honor only at somebody else's expense. And shame, then, is a negative public profile. So that if I want to gain honor, I shame somebody else. Okay? It's a kind of a cruel game. And I haven't spent that much time. I know you have. I haven't spent that much time in the Middle East. I've spent some time, obviously, in Europe. I don't see in Italy or Germany or France or any other place that I've spent any time, that kind of honor shame kind of thing. They do tend to live their lives in public more so than we do. It's very unusual to be, invited to someone's home. Not at all unusual to be invited to meet them for, a meal in a cafe somewhere, and you sit on the plaza and you admire the beauty of the city and have some fabulous meal. That's living your life in public. But an honor shame culture not only lives a life in public, but seeks to sort of burnish one's image in doing so. Okay? But as I say, we don't live in an honor shame culture. I mean, our culture is construed very differently. And so I think that even bracketing or even admitting that Paul lives in an honor shame culture, I don't think Paul can be proposed here as a model for dealing with one's opponents. Okay? So what are our findings here so far? I think one thing that I would say is Paul shows his all too human failings here. Okay? I mean, he just does. And there's no way to sugarcoat that or to say that he was displaying righteous anger or something like that. I think he shows himself to be, again, to quote Nietzsche, allzu menschlich, just all too human in that failing kind of way. But I want to also note here that genius and sin, just to use that word, are often found in the same person. We're coming up to the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. Martin Luther, we're going to hear a lot about, especially in 2017, because it's the 500th anniversary since the nailing of the theses on the church door in Wittenberg. Okay? I will tell you, just as an historian, Martin Luther was a genius. He was a genius from a linguistic point of view also. It is commonly recognized that, especially in his table talk, that he standardized the German language. Okay? And he made, because of his eloquence, his grammatical constructions, his syntax, his vocabulary became normative for German-speaking peoples. Okay? So even bracketing the content of his discourses, Luther was considered in his day, and in our day as well, an eloquent and well-spoken man. He is to the German language what Dante was to the Italian language. And in Luther's case, because you could print this stuff up and it'd be distributed, it became enormously influential. But at the same time, he was about as foul-mouthed an individual as you can imagine. When you get home and you get close to a computer, okay? Though I guess a lot of you carry your computers with you, don't you? You probably do it on your phone as well, but look up Martin Luther insult generator. There's actually a website that does this. And I'm indebted to my church historian, Sister Juliette Rousseau, for putting me onto this. Juliette, she trolls some really unusual corners of the web. But I was talking about Luther as, and she's a nun too. And she's a Madam of the Sacred Heart, which is like the most nunly of nuns, okay? But do we have any true children of the Sacred Heart here in the room? Anybody go to a Sacred Heart school? Oh, did you really? Which one did you go to?
It's a really small one in Oklahoma.
Okay, all right. Well, the nuns that run those schools are really, they're serious people. Okay, they're brilliant. Their mother house is here, and she belongs to that community. And she's the one that found this Martin Luther insult generator. And what it is are quotations from his work, random quotations. And you get this button that says, insult me again, insult me again. Okay? There's one that is simply, Sir Sow. Okay? Now, you know what makes that really insulting? You know what a sow is?
It's a female cow.
No, not a cow.
Pig.
Pig.
Okay.
Yeah. But calling you Sir Sow basically means, you may affect, all of the mannerisms of humanity and masculinity, but really, you're no better than a female pig. Okay? 2 words. See, that's a really effective insult. And with 2 words, you can really be that mean. Now, remember, it's wrong. Don't try this at home. Or think of Vincent van Gogh. Okay? Great artist. What do you all know about Van Gogh? He was a mess. Okay? Probably, I think today we'd say it was probably bipolar. and, you know, incredibly needy. But at one point, you know, I mean, he was in love with this girl, and apparently she didn't pay him a lot of attention. So he sliced off his ear, okay? Now, I don't know whether he sent it to her or not. I hope to God he didn't. But, and you think you've got it bad when some guy texts you, you know? You know, what you get to do there, you can block him, right? And imagine, you know, opening the mail and finding, you know, Vincent's ear. And I know, you know, who was that guy that wrote that song, Vincent? Don McLean, right? I mean, it's a pretty song, right? It's a pretty song about a really troubled individual, you know? And so this world was too beautiful for you and all that. No. Vincent was crazy. He was a really good artist, but he was a nutcase. Okay? And that's what I mean, that genius and sort of trouble coexist in the same person, as I think it did in Paul of Tarsus. Okay? But here's the real point. Human weaknesses, not Paul's, not Martin Luther's, not Vincent van Gogh's, does not invalidate the relationship with God. Here's how I put it. God does not expect you, or Paul, or Vincent, or Martin, to get a lobotomy in the process of, you know, discerning and then fulfilling God's will for you. It does not. So God works not just in spite of our human weaknesses, God works in favor, within our human weaknesses. Let me read this section from, again, the second letter of the Corinthians, where we hear all this, you know, kind of weaknesses. I've been beaten with rods, and then he's got this thorn in the flesh, right? To keep me from being too elated by the abundance of revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan, to harass me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I besought the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I will all the more gladly boast of my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, you could spend the rest of your life meditating on all of this. We don't know exactly what the thorn in the flesh was. It's an image, okay? Like images, it's meant to connote a certain set of associations with you. What do you think of when you think of thorn?
Roses.
Yeah, roses, okay. It's because you're from the suburbs. Okay. Those of us who are Irish know about blackthorns. They're very long, they're very sharp. You have to trim the staff, but it makes a great shillelagh, right? But you get scratched by a blackthorn, it's going to open up a wound on you. Now you get scratched by a thorn on a rose, you know, you'll live to tell the tale. But it won't leave a wound that will, you know, it will not leave a wound that will generate any sympathy. Let's just put it that way. Someone will say, oh, you pricked your finger with a thorn on a rose. What's for dinner tonight? You know, you're not going to get a whole lot of sympathy. You get pricked by a blackthorn, people are going to say, oh my God, that's got to hurt. Are you taking any antibiotics? Here, let me wash that out for you. I mean, they'll kind of come to your aid. So it's injurious. That's the kind of thorn he's thinking about. And then when you say the thorns in the flesh, what does that suggest?
Physical ailment?
What?
Physical ailment?
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea is it's in the flesh and it's still there. Okay? So, if the thing that's hurt is still there, where's my future doctor? Where's she going? If you got something sharp inside of you and it hasn't gone away, what's going to happen?
Move around.
Huh? Yeah, probably you're going to get an infection. Things are going to go from bad to worse. It's going to hurt and it's going to continue to hurt. I'm just thinking about pain. I'm really averse to pain. No, really, I am pain avoiding. I don't do that if I can. So if I get a headache, I first whine because I'm a man, and that's what we do. And then I head for the medicine cabinet. I'm like, give me the Advil here, and the Advil gel caps, because they dissolve really fast, they metabolize very quickly, and soon I will not have reason to whine again. Okay? Yeah.
So what I guess the wonder I have is what's the deal with this in the midst of all these passages like that you're reading? He has a tendency to say, I do not boast, but then he boasts. and it's like, he kind of couches it in like, if I boast, it is boasting for God, but really, when he says I'm better than you, he's really boasting.
Yeah, well, part of this is just an ancient rhetorical trope. It's called litotes, and you basically, Barbara Jordan used to use it in the United States House of Representatives. I do not need to tell you about the crimes committed against the Constitution of the United States by this individual. It's Richard Nixon she was talking about. And by saying, I don't need to tell you, she's telling you. So he's doing that kind of thing. I mean, rhetorically, that's at work here. But my point about the thorn in the flesh is, we don't know what it means. It's just that it was something that was painful and chronic. Okay? And so what does he do? He's considered a holy man, right? He prays about it. And what's the answer? No. The answer is no. Okay? Now again, ordinarily we tend to think that if holy people, men or women, pray for something, because they're better than the rest of us, they're going to get what God wants them to, to what they want God to do. But the answer is no here. And then what's interesting is he continues to theologize about all that. And that's really the point here about a relationship not being invalidated by your own inadequacies. His inadequacies, the invective, the mockery, the impatience, the claims of superiority, all that kind of business, he'll end up saying, those are my weaknesses, and yet God, power is made manifest in them. When I am weak, then I am strong. There's a lesson for the rest of us to take away. So, I've been teaching for 35 years, and even more importantly here in Confessions for 35 years, okay? Nobody's perfect. And you are not perfect. No one is perfect. All of us are flawed. But my point is, and I think Paul's point would be, the flaws are precisely where the grace of God is made apparent. That's really what he's saying here in this concluding passage from 2 Corinthians. So I think when we look at Paul here, and it looks like that's really tough on him, by saying, well, this is not the way to do it, I'm right. I mean that. In other words, I don't think we ought to treat people with whom we have differences by claiming superiority over them, or by using invective against them, or anything else. But on the other hand, it's what this signifies within Paul's world that's important. So maybe a point of reflection here for you could be, you may not use invective, but what are your flaws? And how do those flaws act as an avenue for the grace of God to work in your life and the lives of those with whom you come in contact? That makes sense to everybody? Okay? Questions or comments? Yeah.
I think I'm curious why. It seems like what you're doing is saying that when Paul talks about weaknesses, that's encompassing both his sin and maybe some physical weaknesses and other things that are non-sins.
Right.
So is there a reason why you put sin in the category of a weakness there, as opposed to separating the two and saying one's
let me put it this way. I think I see where you're going here. I don't think the thorn in the flesh is necessarily a physical weakness.
Okay.
I think the thorn in the flesh is just something that is chronically and painful for him. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of ink spilt, and frankly, we'll never know what he meant. Mm-hmm. But one possibility is it's simply these people that continue to dog him everywhere he goes, because he thinks he's doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And history ultimately took his side and said he did do the right thing, mm-hmm. which is why you and I are all here, right? And we're not over in the synagogue. Whatever it was, he is trying his best, he's not achieving success, whether it's ridding himself of physical pain, which I think it's really a metaphor for something else.